Welcome to Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael Neese, president of Our Future is Kind, and your companion in conversations about kindness, leadership, connection, and courage. Each week, I sit down with thoughtful leaders, creators, and bridge builders to explore what a healthier, more humane future could look like, and the choices it takes to build it. These are honest conversations about purpose, culture, curiosity, and what it really means to show up for one another at work, in our communities, and in everyday life. Along the way, we'll unearth practical ideas, small but meaningful acts, and questions worth sitting with, because building what's next is a choice. So let's dive in. Jeanie Davidson is a transformational coach. She and I are co-authors on a book titled Joy Unleashed, The Ultimate Guide to Living Your Best Life. Her amazing chapter, Unconditional Love, Questions That Spark Peace, Harmony, and Joy, is deeply moving. I highly recommend seeking her wisdom there. So Jeanie Davidson, welcome to Our Future is Kind podcast.
Michael, thank you. Thank you for having me. Time's valuable, and I love that you're spending it with me. I'm honored.
Well, I'm honored that you would come on the program and talk to us a little bit about the book, about your chapter and some of your wisdom that you share in there. But before we just dig into all of that, let me just ask you, I introduced you, but what do you think makes you you?
Well, that's a very interesting question. What makes me me? Well, I'm very empathic and I'm a joyful person. So when we did this book project, it was very natural to come to joy. Although I've had my moments, admittedly, as you know from reading the book. What makes me me? One thing is the ability to suppress ego. That's something I've developed over time. And that's something I also address in the chapter of the book. And I know from your work, you have some overlay with that, which I appreciate. Very important. And I'm a mother. I have 3 children. I'm a single mom. One important factor is I had my children, I was a single mom young. And so I've had a life of endurance beyond obstacles. And so coming to joy and reaching goals and accomplishing things that I would envision way back when and bringing them to be is something that I feel is magical. I'm thankful for, and I feel like that's something that contributes to who I am.
It's lovely. I'm really curious. You say becoming a mother pretty young. Mm-hmm. I'm imagining that anytime kindness came your way, it was amazing. And anytime it wasn't coming your way, it had a deep impact. Can you talk to our audience just a little bit about that?
Oh, wow. You are perceptive, Michael. You are very perceptive. Yes. When I became a single mother in my early 20s, I was very alone. My parents were getting divorced, and kindness it felt very far because despite everything we know about human development and people, judgment still arises. And even though I was in my early 20s, I looked like I was about 15. Sure. And so I faced quite a bit of judgment, and I wasn't very supported at the time. And so any moment of kindness was magical. There's a brief story I could tell you. I was going to school, working 2 jobs, and I worked as a waitress in a restaurant for part of one of these jobs. I had 2 men that came in, and I'll tell you, I just felt like it was just me, my daughter, and struggle all the time. And when these 2 men came in, they talked to me about everything. And I felt like, gosh, I'm back in the world of the living, the world of interest, creativity, brilliance, caring, kindness. But I actually had a moment where one of them, when I gave them change, he accused me of trying to get a higher tip because the way I gave the change, it was supposed to be 1s versus a 5. But I actually just got the change from the bartender. But it really crushed my heart because he made an assumption about me. So when you talk about kindness, that was kindness given and received in a time where I was facing very difficult circumstances. And it mattered so much to me, they had no idea. But then when that came, I was like, goodness. But it's interesting how kindness can just come in a moment, and it can be taken away in a moment.
That story is so illustrative of the fact that it really is a switch that can get flipped.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that's the other part is you never know what someone else is going through. And so being able to have that capacity to be willing to look at other people's perspectives and realize that even though there's a desire to be the main character in your life, we're all main characters in our own lives and we have these interactions. So that ability to know that there might be something else going on, or to question motives, or to question assumptions.
Right. We're all walking around in these packages called human bodies, and it is hard to remember that we are ancillary characters in their stories. And anybody else's story that we walk into, we're just background characters or maybe secondary characters, right?
Yes. And Michael, oh my gosh, I love that you said that, because I did have that realization, though much later. I was also a character in his story because of his preconceived notions. And then I thought of that, at the time I felt sorry for myself. And then later I thought, gosh, no, he had something else going on too.
Right. Yeah. It's one of the things that I really loved about your chapter is that you do talk about, I don't remember I think you did actually use the word ego. I think you did explicitly call it out, and something that I'm always investigating, because a healthy ego means that when everybody else gets a share at the table, you can advocate for yourself. That's a healthy ego. Whereas an unhealthy ego is I shouldn't have to wait in line. Don't they know who I am? Why are they cutting me off in traffic? Don't they realize this isn't just their road? Talk to me about ego and how to balance those pieces.
Okay. Yeah. You're absolutely right, because there is this, especially a lot of talk about boundaries. We have come to this awareness. I love the evolution of people, the evolution of our own experiences. And so of course, you must come to yourself and be able to address your own concerns first. Like, I always think of it as when you're a child, you have to learn to possess something before you can give it away. And so with ego, it's really the same thing. It's that self-possession and self-awareness, and being able to step back and shift the perspective where it's not just you in the world, but you have to know you first. And that's one of the things that I work on quite a bit, because I was raised in a way, which I know a lot of people, and maybe some of your listeners, were raised in a way where they were told to listen, to do, to be, but they never really were trained or even thought to reflect inward and to actually be who they wanted to be. And so when this fulfillment moment happens, it's easier to step down your ego because you're taking care of your own needs. But then I also think of interdependence and the community, because that's what allows you to step down. When you are not having your needs met, ego steps up.
Sure.
Ego runs the show because you're constantly pulling and trying to have your needs met. But when you are being observant to take care of your needs, then allowing the ego to be balanced is so easy.
I think that some of us can struggle at times, though, to find that self-reflective nature. I will tell you, I had an interaction with another driver the other day. I had pulled into the wrong parking lot and realized I had to pull back out and to get onto the road. Yeah. So I started moving my car, but then it looked like I was going to exit just immediately onto the road. So I paused, but there was another driver that shook his fist at me and kind of looked at me like I was the world's dumbest person. And in that moment, I really wanted to do harm. I was so angry. I was so mad. But then I had to just kind of laugh at it and remember, he's just on his way somewhere. And if he's feeling righteous indignation about me and how I'm moving my car around, that's something he can carry with him. I don't have to have that with me, but 10 years ago, I would have, maybe been raising my fist too and, mouthing mean words at him through the windshield.
Yeah, the retaliation. Well, and especially this time of year, I mean, people are, if they're celebrating Christmas or they're buying gifts, the malls, everything gets hectic and busy, and there's prevalence of that. Yeah, one thing I think of is when that happens, I actually always remember, for some reason, the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, yeah.
I read it so many years ago, but it always stuck with me. That story he says in the beginning of the man on the train who his kids are misbehaving, and he's just completely oblivious. Everyone's getting so irritated. And then come to find out his wife had just passed. And everyone was judging him. And then you realize, but the truth is, but you know what I love about what you did, Michael, is you interrupted something. So like, even by your lack of reciprocating the anger, it was an interruption for his momentum with that. And so that's like a superpower. Sometimes people think of kindness as, oh, it's not, maybe it's weak, or it's not. No, it's not weak. It's actually strength. And it's a power to create that change. And so by you having that awareness, you just created that shift. I mean, maybe he was realizing, wait, why am I acting out like that? Why did I just act like that? And he wanted to bait you or he just reacted. And, that's the same thing. Probably his needs were not met, because I've been in that position too. And I'm a little bit of I'm a fast driver. I want to go places, I have goals. I want to accomplish things. And so, yes. So I understand that too. And, that fire in you. But I appreciate that. I love that you did that. And something so easy that we can all do if we just take that perspective.
My new mantra for the last few years as I drive is, I've been that guy. I've been that guy too. As somebody is rushing and cutting people off, or is going too slowly and they seem distracted, like I've been that guy,
Oh
so
gosh.
how can I be mad at them for stuff that I know that I have done?
Yes, yes. Well, then you get into not being a hypocrite, because we all have that propensity to be a hypocrite at times. But you're right. I do that too. I love that you said that, Michael. You and I have a very common way of thinking, because I do that same thing when I see someone like that. I mean, on occasion I might get that instinct, but then I check myself and I think, well, who am I to? Who am I? Have I ever been there? Have I ever done that? Of course.
Right. Well, in those moments, Jeanie, of maybe a little bit of weakness, how do you talk yourself out of it? And do you know when those times are going to be when you feel weakest and most vulnerable to making a bad decision?
Yes. So, well, the first thing I do is proactive measures.
Sure.
So through my work, we didn't really cover this in the Joy Unleashed in our conversations with that, but I have the Lumen method, which is my method that I've used to help myself keep composure and be able to get beyond my own limitations. But so through that practice, it's a really proactive approach. And so that way I can begin from a great state, right? So
Right.
if I'm wake up and I'm feeling here, I don't start my day like that. I won't allow myself to start my day like that. And so I will do my method that helps me raise up. And that way I'm looking at the world from a higher perspective than I might have if I woke up feeling the other way. And so proactive measures, but inevitably, that's how you start. But then of course there's moments that will trigger you. And so what I do is it is really just a practice. When I feel pressure building throughout the day, one simple thing I do is just go outside. I work from home, but I mean, I've had moments where I worked in an office. And I always think way back when I used to work at this company in Fort Worth. It was a rather large company, and people would not take breaks, or they would sit at their desks for breaks. But for me, I'm like, get me out of here.
Right.
And so I would go outside, but even it's an interruption. It's a pattern interruption. So when you start feeling that anxiousness, it's only building and you're getting ready to set off. So to me, it's very proactive. and I will just go outside. And it's not because, yes, nature, that's great, but also something happens because your vision shifts. So it's, you can change it inwardly, or you can take outward influence and change it externally, inwardly. And so just simply by walking outside, suddenly the sky's there. I can't help but see it. It's big. All of those feelings that were keeping me contracted suddenly expand naturally by the sky and the greenery or whatever's around. That perspective shift is so simple and easy. What else do I do is I just pause, because that's also another interruption. And if I give into it, and I do, I can feel it immediately. And so it's, how does that feel immediately with what you just did? Well, then you can just stop and say, okay, wait, stop.
Right.
Kind of like you did with the not reacting to the driver. The same is true. And I'll give you a simple example. My son, he has a hard time waking up in the morning. So I've even thought of outsourcing it and bringing in someone to wake him up, just to pattern interruption. So I'm really big on energy and pattern interruption, because there is an energy that develops when I'm like, wake up, an hour later, wake up, and this is one of those circumstances. And so whenever something's not working, I'm very quick to try something different. So it's just changing your approach. So whatever you've been doing that's not working, just open up to, okay, what's ideal? What is ideal? And for everything, what is ideal? What is ideal in this circumstance? What is ideal in this moment? What is it, the outcome I want? And what else is possible to help that happen? And so suddenly your behavior will become different simply by asking the question, because then it's not just an instinctive response based on historical patterns, but it's actually a conscious decision because you opened up to the possibilities.
It sounds like this is an entire methodology that you use all the time. I mean, is this something that you introduce into your coaching? How do you use this to help others?
Okay, so thanks for asking, Michael. So how I use this, and by the way, I did a lot of experimentation. I used to think, oh, I'll meditate and that'll fix everything, right? Right. And then at first I was like, wait, I can't meditate. I can't even stop and focus. I almost wondered if I had ADHD. And I think a lot of people are getting that way based on how things are going, the progression of development and technology and everything else. But for me, it was coming to this, like a sequence of events of how do I create the change I want? And so when I created situations in my life I didn't love, I was working in a career I didn't like. I was married and it was not an ideal marriage. It was a lot of stress and not, there's two sides to every story, right? But it wasn't a good marriage. And I was in that marriage for a very long time. And then I left and, but then I chose it. So how do you change your decisions? Because everything that we have is based on every decision that's led us to here. And so how do I actually make the different decisions when I've had this pattern of making the same decisions that lead me to these places? And so at any rate, that's how I came up with the Lumen method, which it begins with identifying what is the problem, identifying minus blocks. And so through my life history, I'm very empathic, so it's very natural for me to pick up on what people are feeling and experiencing, even if they don't know. Right. And so that's one thing that's been very helpful I start with an assessment. It's the Lumen assessment. And with that, it answers questions. It's all very intuitive, gut-driven responses, not thinking responses, but very gut-driven. And then we go through the series of questions and we pick out what are the things that are blocking this better progress, the joy. And I call Lumen's a unit of light. So I think of living with light, living with joy. And so, but then, okay, so you do that, you identify the problems. Then there's techniques to alleviate the problems. And so that way, immediately you start changing that energy of all of it. and then progressively through these practices. And I alter them based on what they're dealing with, of course, because it's tailored to what they're dealing with. But it's really amazing, because I think of it as this analogy. I think it's very important. One thing that's really important is to release what's not serving you. And when we resist, people say, resist, what you resist persists. And so one of the biggest obstacles that I think people face is resisting what they don't want to look at, because you have to look at things in order for them to change. You have to see them. And so if you're not willing to look at them, but we do it in a very seamless, very easy way, like most efficient, like let's get beyond it. Let's not dwell forever. Right. And so we do that. And then it's about, once you release that, and I use the analogy of like in a closet, let's say I have a wardrobe and I want a new wardrobe. Well, I could try to stuff in the new wardrobe with the existing wardrobe, but I can't. I've got to remove things from that closet. And so that's why it's so important. So daily releasing of whatever is going on, this clutter, the wardrobe you don't want, the feelings or circumstances you don't want, they must be shed. And then what are you going to fill them with? Because if you're not addressing these things, then you could make new decisions that put the same kind of things there. Well, that's a problem. Yeah. Right. And so that's what, with my method, is to help them make new decisions that are right for them based on what their vision is. And sometimes people don't even have their vision. Yeah. I don't know if you've had moments in your life where you're like, okay, I can't see beyond what's coming next.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's vision and value systems and those sorts of things.
Yes, you're right, Michael, because, and sometimes people lose touch with their values because circumstances distract you from them. But again, if you come back to the core of the values, which I know you talk a lot about values, is so important, but it's really keeping that awareness. And like with your value system, that's how you were able to quickly shift that episode in the parking lot, because that's not your value. Your value is not to rage back. And so, yes, it's coming back to your values. That's another way of stating it. I love that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book and your chapter specifically. Yeah. You got really vulnerable with your readers, and kudos to you for being able to say, what was going on in that particular scene in your life without just giving away the entire chapter. Can you just talk about what the bigger struggle was? I know that your daughter was involved, but can you just tell us a little light retelling of the story?
Yeah, sure. So you're right. And by the way, I am not usually that vulnerable. I don't usually share things like that. But for some reason, and this goes back to what we were just talking about making decisions that you following what feels right. And at the time, I felt very called to share the story. And so I hope it's helpful to people. My oldest daughter was struggling with mental illness, and it was the realization of that and all of the circumstances that surrounded it. And I tell a very specific story about when it became clear and how my own ego, back to the topic of ego, as a parent, was getting in the way of my ability to help her. But, this is a book about joy. So of course there's a good story that comes of it, but it's also, we learn not just from the good things, we also learn from the hard things. Yeah. And so through that, I tell a bit about that story. And the one thing I will say is, especially with parenthood, that's a very loaded topic. Relationships, personal relationships, we define ourselves mostly by our relationships, especially familial relationships, and everyone does it, and not everyone does what we want them to do. For sure. Just trying our best efforts and wisdom. So I share basically some of the things that people don't like to talk about, because, especially with the rise of, one of the good things about the rise of social media is the spreading of education around more conscious decision making, conscious parenting, all of these things. But the truth is, in reality, no parent's perfect. And we don't often talk about that part because we're always trying to present ourselves as a certain way in the world. We don't want to be judged for how we parent. It's a very, very sensitive topic.
Right.
And so that's why I share something vulnerable about what was happening at that time and how I was able to change that. And even with clients, like I've had the same thing where in this case, it was mental illness, but I've had other things like, you know, dealing with like gender issues, addiction. You know, there's things that we don't want to talk about, but in family life, things show up that we don't want and we're embarrassed of. And so I chose to share this because I don't want people to feel ashamed. There's nothing to feel ashamed of. We are dealt what we're dealt, and we have the power to create the change not only for ourselves, but by consequence, those around us, including our loved ones. And so that was the message in the book and how that brings joy, because it's the ultimate joy. Relationships and family. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. The ideas of unconditional love and being able to take a step back, removing ego, being able to see the other perspectives. I mean, you handle it all so deftly in this chapter. I was really quite moved about what you were referencing in your own family life. So thank you for that great gift.
Thank you. I felt the same about your chapter too, actually. You have I loved your chapter, and I felt like you were very vulnerable too. So I really felt like I felt like I knew you just from your chapter.
Well, yeah, we're kindred spirits here. This is
kindred
great. This is the first time I've ever worked on a multi-author book that had so many authors. There were 25 of us. A quick shout out to Sherry Elise, the lead author on Joy Unleashed. Thank you so much for including us in this big book effort. What I love about the book, and you have to tell me what you love about the book. What I love about it is that it's like a Whitman sampler. Like I can pick it up. If I just need a quick pick me up or I need some new perspective, I can just flip it open to almost any new chapter I haven't read and get some really cool new perspective on how to find joy, how to unleash my own joy. Have you found that to be the case, or?
Yes, actually, I love that you just said that, because that's actually one of the things I do sometimes. When I wake up in the morning, if in addition to the other things I mentioned, if I have a book that doesn't require a lot of reading at once, just a little bit. But yeah, these chapters are so short and the anecdotes are so powerful. And the lessons, each and every one shares something that you can apply and find yourself in. You find yourself in that story. And I am amazed by these people that Sherry assembled, because each of them, just hearing their stories, I'm like, wow, every single one. I didn't even expect that. Yeah. I didn't expect that I would relate to each story. Right. Because what are the odds of that? But yet somehow they're all very relatable.
Right. Even if it's a totally different experience than anything you have personally experienced, yes, you can envision yourself in that person's shoes, which I find amazing. Julie Goldberg has a really good chapter on her inner child work. Yes. And trying to visualize herself as a 7-year-old little girl and having to take care of that little girl as if she's present with her in the room physically. And I was so moved by what she wrote. I thought it was one of my favorite chapters.
Yeah, I really love her, and that's such important work too, because that's where when we talk about decision making, what led you here, and that not having your needs met, a lot of it is that lingering emotions from childhood where you're building those patterns that keep repeating. And so being able to go to the root cause is really amazing. Yeah, it truly is. Yeah. We get into that a bit sometimes too, depending on what the circumstances are. But yeah, I love her work. I love what is being shared. And it is important to be able to look at things from a new way. And that's one of those ways.
Yeah. Well, it's a fun book. Hopefully people grab a copy of it and open. I think yours is chapter 20. Is that right?
Chapter 20.
Yeah. So when you get the book, I'm not saying, skip chapters, but if you can get to Jeanie Davidson's chapter 20, it's definitely a great treat to start with. And I really enjoyed it. I would love to now shift our conversation a little bit into the world of our future is kind.
Yes.
And take you down this sort of thought experiment that we do here, which is we're gonna pile into a time machine together. And I'm gonna pilot us to 100 years in the future. So it's 2126.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, Jeanie, we have done all the right things. For 100 years, we did everything great. There's nothing we missed. We did all of the good things. When we step out of that time machine together, Jeanie Davidson, what are you looking for to verify that I was truthful, to see if really we did all the right things?
When I walk off of this time machine, I can immediately sense peace in the air. I can feel the presence of people in harmony, and the world is beautiful. There's creation, there's art, there's nature preserved and beautiful, abundant. There's abundance. There, people are smiling and serving each other with kindness in small actions and large. And there is a unity and higher perspective that is prevalent in all that's happening.
Unity is not a word that a lot of us are using right now to describe current events.
Correct.
So now here comes the harder question.
Okay.
I said we did all the right things. What are those right things? What are the courageous acts that we need to take right now and for the next 100 years to get to that beautiful future?
Well, for one, it is starting, kind of like I said earlier, starting with you and proactively addressing what needs need to be met within yourself and being open to receiving your own inner wisdom. And an easy way to do that, certainly the Lumen method, but even outside of that, one thing, and this is something new I've started doing a little bit, is having uninterrupted time. And usually I'll do that with a walk. So I'll do a 30-minute walk every day, phone on do not disturb, and nothing, just nothing. Simple nothingness, because that's when you get to hear your voice and the creativity, the ability to innovate, the ability to know what you're here for, to be able to see things from a higher perspective where you're not reactive, but you're actually there in the moment and not fighting what is. And that's not to say being disempowered, it's actually being able to see solutions. So to see things from the multi angles in order to come to the best solutions. And so the future in this time machine where there is this peace, it starts with the peace of the individuals themselves and their ability to apply that in their interactions with others, because it's a mirror.
Right.
Yeah. And yes, so the steps would be be willing to do the work. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be quite easy. And when you do it, actually call it unwork because it's actually just stripping away what is not you and coming back to the you that getting out of the conditioned you, coming back to the natural you, and allowing yourself to be that way in the world, which by consequence allows others to be that way because you're so well cared for by you that you're willing to let others be cared for by them. And when they need the help, you can offer it because you're so well cared for.
So, of course, now I have a big follow-up question for you about that. If you have things that aren't you, that you're hoping to strip away, and you find that you've just kind of gotten off a path that you really want to be on, I mean, what recenters you? How do you get there? Because it's not always easy to be kind. It's not always easy to live those values. And in order to build this great future, we can't be distracted. We can't be living an unlife, right?
Yeah.
So how do you pull yourself back to the right path?
Well, I can tell you by having lived that, because I did have experiences where I was distracting myself with even alcohol, with just staying in the momentum of what was started simply because I didn't know how to change it or what to change it to.
Mm.
And then you have those moments where all you're doing is, binge watching Netflix or, living the same day every day, and not having new, fresh experiences that change up that energy, like I mentioned earlier. So how do you do that? Well, I do have something I do that helps people do it, which I can share at the end if you like. But the one thing I would say is that's been very helpful to me as a starting point would be writing out what's in your mind. And I've heard this, there's something called morning pages that I know someone has done before. That was a concept that they shared, and I can't recall who it was. And then Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week, he talks about monkey mind and being able to release your thoughts. And so one way to release thoughts and to become aware, and even Earl Nightingale talks a lot about this, like not specifically journaling, but actually taking that space for your thoughts and not going with the momentum of the averages of what everyone's doing, but actually being willing to to provide space for you. And if it's uncomfortable, which it will be when you don't like what is and who you're being, it's being willing to do it. And so one thing I like to do is, especially if I'm feeling a little bit anxious or cranky or just a little foggy, I like to just write whatever's in my mind and not curate it, just purge it.
Right.
So purging what is already is, it's almost like I said earlier, in the closet, it's taking some things out. Even if you don't know what to fill in, at least taking some things out makes it lighter. And actually, this is funny. So behind me, I have this image. I know it's a weird image, but I like it because that's one thing I think of is like flow and floating instead of like struggling and climbing and gnawing. And, through the day, it's about how do I flow more seamlessly where I have the energy to create, where I have the energy to interact. And when I'm having a conversation with someone, instead of saying, hi, how are you doing? And walking away, it's actually, hi. How, what's going on with you? And you actually want to hear and connect because that's what life's about.
Right. And for those of you who are listening in, the image that's behind Jeanie, to my eye, looks like a whole bunch of hot air balloons that are different colors and they're just floating up happily behind her.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, this is wonderful. This is amazing. How do you stay inspired? I know that some of us just doom scroll. I have just stopped doing that for the last several years. I spend 15 minutes on the news per week. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And, my way of staying inspired might be to listen to some beautiful choral music or to go outside and see nature. What are the things that freshen you up and give you inspiration?
Okay. Yes. That's a great question because we all need it. So I am very growth minded. So I do listen to, different podcasts. And, one thing about, like even in coaching business, the work is the rewarding part, but sometimes there's these other aspects that provide the work. And, so I'm always learning things that help close the gap between my skill level and planning forward. So that eases me, that inspires me. As far as I do have a vision that I read daily with emotion.
Okay.
And I created that vision and I altered it over time in a way that it can be received. Because so because I have a vision board and so forth. Sometimes I look at that. And actually, there was a time when it was fog where I could not see beyond what was there. Like I'd see, I want all these things, but it feels so far away. And it felt like there was this big fog over it and I couldn't reach it. But that's why I started doing these things. But one of them is reading that vision, because that keeps me very centered and anchored. Another, of course, walking and, the movement's great, stretching. I know that sounds silly. It's finding the balance between listening. So because I enjoy podcasts and learning, sometimes I receive a lot of this because people are sharing it with me, but I'm also very conscious not to just go down a rabbit hole of something. So I'm very focused on what matters to me. Because there's only so much time. And as we get older, we really do need to be conscious of what we're spending our energy and time on, because it does become more limited. And we do need to find ways to increase the energy for all that we want. And also knowing what we want, so we're not squandering the time. And so,
Right.
so I'm very conscious on coming back to, maybe, as you would say, that my values.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I wrote this vision, I do it in a way that sometimes I would read it and it would feel false. Like it was maybe a pipe dream, because it was things that I wanted in my life. But then progressively, as I would alter the wording in a way that would allow my subconscious to receive it, then that's a big changes started happening in my life that were more congruent with what I would envision.
Oh, wow.
And to stay inspired, that's one way. Noticing the good in people is another one, because you get what you look for. And I'm not talking about being oblivious or denying reality, rather recognizing, as you said, sometimes I'm that person.
Right. Yeah.
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 And so seeing, actually, I was thinking of something too, because I don't know if a lot of your, the people that listen to your podcast might be in workplaces. I was thinking about something. I don't know if you mind if I share real quick.
Do it. Yeah.
Okay. I remember when I was working in corporate work that sometimes, managers, so people that are really good at work, which I was, I was a worker, and then they promote you. And then suddenly you're managing people, but it doesn't mean your skills are necessarily aligned with that, or at least you haven't developed those yet. So then you hit obstacles and you wonder, why won't everyone try as hard as me?
Right.
And then it's frustrating. And then you try different approaches with them, but sometimes it can feel inauthentic.
Sure.
Right. So like when people are being kind, it's important to come from an authentic place. So I was thinking about these things that we're talking about help you as a leader be more authentic in the way you're being kind, and not just kind, but honest and kind, because that's important too.
Sure.
And it helps everyone, and being able to do it in the way that's so receivable.
Right.
But I was also thinking about if people have a manager or someone that feels fake kind to them.
Right.
And it irritates them. I started thinking, you know what? At least they're trying.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's not, even that matters, because there could be a totally different alternative. They could just be lashing out at you. But if they're taking time to try to refine themselves and their skills to be a better leader, and they care enough to try.
Yeah. I always coach leaders to remember, if you're trying something new, right, and it's well-intentioned, you've really reasoned it out, and you're trying something new, it is okay to say to everybody on your team, I'm trying this new thing, and it might come across a little awkward or a little different, and I promise it's coming from a place of really caring about you. And maybe I stick the landing, maybe I don't, but I want you to know that it's coming from a good place. And I love feedback. I'd love to find out, how is this landing with you? Am I getting it right? Are there things that we could be doing different? Do you have ideas that are kind of along the same lines? Approach me and we can chat about it. But call out the awkwardness. Call out the fact that you're trying this new thing. And then people will they'll give you grace. They'll be
Yeah.
interested in the fact that you are wanting to do this for them, because not, like you just said, Jeanie, not every manager is going to try.
Yes. Yes. Michael, I love that. That's so wise. And then that goes into the same because offering that moment also gives them permission. And even saying, "Hey, I'm open to feedback." It's that law of reciprocation where if you're giving feedback, you're also willing to receive it. And that's really setting the tone. That's definitely being an amazing leader. That's a great perspective. And also it's reminding people you're human, because the humanity is in business. The humanity's there. It's everywhere. But acting like it's not is a mistake.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes leaders, who are facing all kinds of deadlines, all kinds of pressure from above, it can feel like the most tempting thing in the world to just grab the reins and say, go do it this way. There is no other way. Shut up and do what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to reach for that, and it will give you such terrible results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas if you're really opening yourself up and saying, you got hired for a reason. So did you, and so did you, and so did you. I want to hear your ideas. We need to collectively attack the problem. I don't care whose solution is the one that wins. It should be the best one. Yeah. And then suddenly it's teamwork. Suddenly it's people being vulnerable and hearing each other and being willing to give that feedback.
Yes, I love that. And the other thing is being willing to try something new, to try a different approach and mix it up a little bit. If what you're doing and you're just hitting your head, it's not working, then shift it slightly. You're right. Michael, you're so right.
I'm loving this conversation, but we're almost at the end. And I want to know, are there any other bits of wisdom that you want to talk to the audience about? Is there anything that you want to offer up? I know in your chapter you had a special, benefit, like bonus that you had in there. Talk about anything that you want. The floor is yours.
Okay, sure. Well, I would say one thing I would offer is wherever you are right now is great.
Okay.
Because especially in America, I'll say, but I feel like this is everywhere. We have this desire to progress. Mm-hmm. And how do you progress without feeling frustration for where you are? Mm-hmm. And so it's about the balance of appreciating where you are in order to accelerate your progress forward. Mm-hmm. And so instead of comparing yourself to others and perhaps being self-critical, maybe just like I said earlier, write down your thoughts to release them. And I physically will picture it physically releasing onto the page. Oh, yeah. A very cathartic experience, let it out. And then just come back to here and now. I heard something recently on a YouTube channel, and it was the journey is the destination.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hadn't heard that before. Maybe it's a common thing, but I hadn't heard it. And then he kept saying it. The journey is the destination. The journey is the destination. All these ways. And here you talk about mixing it up so it's received differently. But when you think of the journey is the destination, then the outcome becomes, it's still important, but it's actually this right now as an outcome.
It's well put. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because previous you would be so delighted to be where current you is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And enjoying that journey is everything.
Yeah. Appreciate you. And it becomes a lot easier to appreciate others when you appreciate you. And if you find yourself being critical of others, it's likely you're being critical of yourself. And so that's kind of like red alert, go write this out and just at least come to neutral.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeanie Davidson, my co-author on Joy Unleashed, you have brought me a lot of joy today.
Oh, me too. I feel very joyful having talked to you, Michael.
Yeah, this is great. Before I let you go, I want you to tell everybody, how can people get in touch with you, learn from you, support you, and just be in your orbit?
Okay, well, thanks for that. So my website is a good place because you can connect there's several buttons that you can press that reach me. So if you want to connect, please do. It's JeanieDavidson.com. And so probably you have that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And then I do a free breakthrough session this week for the people that listen to your podcast. So if they'd like to do a breakthrough session, I'm happy to do that. It's just a short, maybe 30, 40 minutes of like a one-on-one, what's going on and how can we shift that? And so they can at least take away at least one, maybe a few things that are very tangible to apply to start changing what they're feeling a pull to change.
What a wonderful gift. I hope everybody who's, if you're in your car, if you're on a run, don't worry about it. Look in the show notes and you can take advantage of this really cool offer to spend a bit of time with a very wise transformational coach. Jeanie Davidson, thank you again for being on Our Future is Kind.
Thank you, Michael. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Be kind to the other drivers.
Yeah. This episode's Kindness Challenge. Do one uninterrupted 30-minute walk each day this week. Put your phone down, put it on Do Not Disturb with no podcasts, no texting, and no scrolling. Walk with simple nothingness, just you, your breath, and your environment. When your mind spins, gently return to what's true for me right now. End by doing one small act of kindness immediately after. A sincere text, a thank you, letting someone merge in front of you in traffic, anything like that. And do it from that calmer place. Want to stay inspired so you can stay kind? Write and read a personal vision statement daily until it feels believable. Draft a short vision of how you want to live and lead and read it with emotion each morning. If it feels fake, adjust the wording until your mind can receive it. Jeannie's point, make it congruent, not aspirational fluff. Pair it with a quick thought purge, free writing, morning pages, so you're acting from values, not reactivity. You've been listening to Our Future is Kind podcast, where building what's next is a choice. Make your next choice a good one and help build the future we want to live in.